Can everyone hear me? Kind of. Okay, that works. Okay, so welcome everyone. Happy Monday. Hope you're having a good Monday. Report from council, or to council, excuse me, was last week. We'll take some time to talk about that. I will just go ahead and start with attendance. So if you are here, please say here, present, raise your hand, all that fun stuff. Catherine Barrett.
Here.
Aaron Black.
Here.
Catherine Bullard. I know Jonna Drake is not here. Everyone keep her in your thoughts and prayers. She is in the hospital currently, but she hopefully is doing better. But definitely keep her. Yes. So definitely still keep her in your thoughts and prayers though. Gary Dreif. Tara Hildebrand.
Here.
Lori Ward. She's normally on this side. I don't see her. Put a question mark for now. Sarah Mayer should be joining us virtually here in a few minutes. So I'm going to put a question mark by her name. Jordan Pryor here. Mike Scholl. Perfect. Jessica Schneider.
Here.
Is Ron Stoddart. Here. Patty Swiger. Merlin Thompson. Yep. Shane Vick. Yes, sir. Natalie Walsh. Yep. I like how much bigger that yes, sir had. That was, you had your coffee today. All right. With that, let's go ahead and are there any additional changes that need to be made to the minutes from meeting 12, which we had to go back and fix? It was Lieutenant. We either put Lester or Lesher and had to switch it for said lieutenant.
We corrected his name.
Yes, we corrected his name. Are there any other changes that need to be made in meeting 12's minutes? All right, then I move that we accept the minutes. All right, we have a second. Those have been passed. Now for meeting 13, any changes that need to be made to the minutes for meeting 13? There are no changes. Then I move that we pass the minutes.
Second.
Excellent, we have a second. All right, and with that, we have agenda review. So real quick, I'm sure that you guys have all seen the agenda, but today we're gonna have discussions about the outcome about the most recent report to council, any takeaways we might have, what recommendations they may have made for us that we could use moving forward. And we're gonna take time to finalize our Let's Talk Loveland page for Nicole Yost to publish. And we'll talk about some items associated with it, such as like commissioner bios, our trust commission survey, what we want on that, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, we have public comments. Anyone in the chambers have public comments? No? You sure we don't buy it? I promise. Do we have any phone-in comment? Excellent.
Okay. If you'd like to speak to this item, please press star 9 on your phone, or choose the raise your hand feature. So caller, I'm sorry, username with the name Larry. Please accept the request to unmute. I'm sorry, please accept the request to become a panelist. You are unmuted. If you could please unmute yourself, and you are able to begin your public comment.
Thank you for connecting. I really struggled with some time here to figure out whether or not I really wanted to talk to the group. My name is Larry Sarner. There are at least two people sitting at the round table, or the partially round table, who know exactly who I am. I had been a resident of Loveland for over 40 years, and presently in exile, but watching nonetheless. And I watched the previous two of your meetings, and actually listened to the report that was made at the last council study session. And I'm here, I think, to actually suggest that you either contemplate a mass resignation because you're absolutely not going anywhere, or that you actually try to convince the council that something needs to be done with respect to trust in this commission. And I think, or trust, in the commission and in the city hall. And that's really the difficulty I think that you're facing right now. And I think the struggles that you've been having, and I heard at both of those meetings that I did listen to, is you really don't have anything to do. And if you're actually going to start working on surveys, public surveys, to determine what's going on, you've just wasted 6 months of your time. You're not going to have anything done in time. You might as well save yourself a lot of time and trouble, the city a little bit of money, and just call it quits. So that's probably the summary of what I could have said, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Sarner. Any more phone and comment?
Thank you, Chair Pryor. I don't see any more raised hands for
Okay.
public comment.
Perfect. Okay. And then Jeffrey, we don't have any email comment, correct? Correct. Okay. All right. Well, then that concludes our public comment agenda item. Now we move on to discussing council and to what Mr. Sarner had to say. Trust me, I'm sure at times a lot of us have had that thought. So with that, I'm going to open the floor to you guys, see what you guys thought. I personally thought that it went much better this go around. I mean, I wasn't there for 2.5 hours, which was a plus. So, but anything they said that stuck with you guys?
Who's first? He is being very nice. Thank you, Commissioner Stoddard. Actually, I really would have liked to have seen it, but it wasn't on to start with. And it never on channel 16, which is the way I get it. And it was supposed to be rebroadcast the next morning, and it wasn't. And at that point, I gave up. So I have absolutely no idea what happened. I'll be glad to know.
Other than that, did you like it?
It was great. Commissioner Pryor did the best job I can imagine. So, yeah.
Ron?
I had a special TV that was able to bring it in. And I thought it was, I mean, there was some stuff about it that I didn't like. But I thought overall, it was an incredible improvement over the first meeting. Mr. Chairman, I thought you did an excellent job. I thought some of the questions were going down rabbit holes that didn't make a lot of sense and I was confused with, but I thought you handled everything well. I thought that the general reaction of the council was much more positive, and I think that I was very pleased with the way it went.
Excellent. And real quick, Gary, before I let you go, maybe this is a question for you, Mr. Adams. Would we be able to get that video on YouTube or something like that so we can distribute to people who haven't seen it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. One is it's on our city site now for a city council meeting, but I'm looking behind, I have my IT director right behind us there, a CIO, And maybe if he could answer the question for us.
Yeah, we do apologize for the inconvenience of the last meeting, as you can see. And as you can hear from Larry's wonderful, the volume of his public comments tonight, that actually the system has gone through a major overhaul over the last couple of weeks. One of the unforeseen challenges that we faced was that our broadcast was down for over a week, and we're just getting through the final stages of being able to rebroadcast, as well as there's more improvements even to come, which include the broadcast environment. To my understanding, it is available, and it was broadcast on YouTube last week, and it should be available on our YouTube channel, I believe, even right now.
Perfect. Then would there be any? Yes, but I still want people to be able to see it as just, I mean, I don't know if Catherine has other means of being able to watch it or not, but if I can at least send you a link, I'd like to send you a link. Okay.
So we can, I mean, if there's something we need to accommodate, we'd be happy to do it.
No, I think we'll be fine. We'll, I'm sure we can find the link on either the website or the YouTube page. So I'll find it and I'll send it to you, Catherine. Gary, yes.
Yes, I watched it live on the YouTube channel. It was very good. The audio, visual, everything came well on that. I think you did a much better job this time, and it was much improved to the second the others. So just that's, I mean, YouTube was the way I watched it because I didn't have to go into the den and watch it on a little computer screen. I could watch it on the regular television. Thank you.
Any other takeaways? Mike, did you have something?
I didn't see it. I just had a question
Okay.
for you or for whoever listened. I mean, I was just curious. I don't get the impression that council had given any indication that they were planning to kind of change the ordinance in any way or provide any clarity as to our direction, I'm assuming, or address the ad hoc nature of the commission.
No, neither of those two things were addressed, and actually in back-to-back counselor responses, one person told me that we weren't a research body and the other person told me that we should be doing more research before we give a recommendation. So,
Yeah.
so about the exact opposite of what I'm sure you were probably looking for.
If either of them could get four of their members to agree with them, we'd have clarity, but until that
Yes.
point, it's just an opinion, so.
Okay, Natalie.
Thank you, Chairman Pryor. I thought your presentation was excellent. And your fielding of the questions was very flexible and also excellent. And I was proud of you. I think that you did a great job. What was super interesting about that meeting, I don't know if people stayed on for the whole meeting, but the last presentation was the diversity, inclusiveness, equity, inclusiveness, and belonging presentation. And I think it had been from a Rule of 4 request. And so they put together a study session and an evaluation of should we have a commission. And it was thorough and it was professional and it educated the counselors and their questions were really great. And I thought to myself, I wonder why they didn't actually put that level of effort really into the creation of this commission, because it wouldn't have been, I think then the people that the commission, the city council people that voted for the commission would know what they were voting for. And they'd have something to look back to in terms of, what they were. We would also have that guidance. So that, because even amongst this group, we had the same impression. Some of us read it and was like, oh, we're supposed to help them we're supposed to help them. We're supposed to do some investigation and help them communicate what happened better. And then other people were like, no, we're supposed to use our goodwill and tell people they should trust the city. And, both interpretations are equally valid. But, so I just thought it was just so interesting because there was so much work put into that piece and it was so professional and it was on such a difficult topic for our city council that it created a framework so that they could have a professional conversation about it and make a reasoned decision regardless of where each of them come out. At least, you know, it's informed. And so like if they create such a commission, that commission will understand its charge and their first report to council won't be such a bloodbath as ours was. Because I think that first report, you know, as our chair, you suffered the burden of the lack of preparation and the lack of information, lack of education of city council. And we are just doing the best we could, even though we might not all agree on everything too. So it was a really great presentation. They were all of them were very grateful to. I can't remember the woman who put it together, but it was top shelf. And I was, it just kind of made me sad that they didn't do that for this. And I don't really understand why they did. It doesn't make sense because that's the way to do it. I mean, so I don't know, maybe there is a internal presentation, you know, for us that we just never saw. Steve would know that. But anyway, it was just interesting that it was in the same meeting.
Right. Next, we have Catherine Barrett, then Sarah, then Aaron.
Thank you. I think you did an amazing job, Jordan. I was so impressed with your ability to stay calm under fire, with your, you know, the fact that you had statistics ready at the ready, even though they were disregarded, and that he cut you off when you were trying to give those statistics. I thought and I sent some of this out in an email. I thought the comment of the evening was from Councilor Sampson saying to us, be brave, be the commission that the city of Loveland needs. And that really struck a chord in me as far as our call to just be honest and have some integrity. And we are. I mean, I think that we have more integrity than many people in the city trying to do good. But I think that we really hold ourselves to a higher standard. And I'm very proud to be working with this group. The one takeaway that I had was well, there were two, but the first one was when we were asked to provide research and analysis. And then the mayor pointed out that the city is responsible for providing research analysis. We ask the questions, the city does the research and analysis, and then we make our recommendation. And so I would like to move tonight, if I may, that we ask the city manager if he can provide research and analysis using the statistics that we have to support our recommendations for the increased co-responder resources.
I'll second that. Real quick, then let's have a discussion about it. Does anybody have anything that they would? Okay, Ron?
Just one thing, I thought at the last meeting, it was clear that the city manager was going to be presenting a recommendation to do that. So I'm not sure what additional, I'm sure that he will do that with the research and analysis in order to support the budget request.
City manager, I apologize. I know that you've mentioned it once or twice, but if you wouldn't mind clarifying again for us.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, we will be working with both CARE and the co-responder programs for their budget request for 2023. So your recommendation to me last time was to make sure this is discussed, which it was in front of council, and also then to carry that request forward into the 2023 budget process, which I will do. And I try to make it clear to council that we know there's more information that needs to be obtained.
Yep, that's when you jumped in. I remember that.
And so obviously I'll be working on that with the police department and Summit Stone.
Okay, and then I believe Aaron has a follow-up question.
City manager, do you feel like city council is going to believe the city professionals that have been hired to give them that information? Because it seemed like we took our recommendation straight from the professionals' mouths and they weren't believing it. And so I'm just wondering your thoughts and your feelings on if you feel like you have a council who's going to take your city staff's professional recommendations to heart for that budget for that program.
Uh, So I think what I can say is that we will, in a given year, we'll probably have 300 or 400 budget recommendations that are needing to have additional information to them, and this is one of those. The council is, in some cases, used to seeing a lot more information than what they saw the other night with this presentation, fairly said. They also know that we'll be putting together the needs, because I still have not seen, other than they're saying so, their executive director, for instance, was not in this meeting for Summit Stone. I want to hear from them exactly what is going to be provided with 4 more co-responders and the support staff. Is it 24/7, 365 coverage? How does that work? How do they work vacations into all the details of everything that would be there, and how much it's going to cost? Because right now we don't know that number. And so that will compete with all the other budget requests that come in for 2023. And also the police department are also working on a parallel item coming out of the meetings they've been having on the implementation plan. So I suspicion that that request will be married with this one. So it'll be kind of coming from 2 different directions, and that's why I was asking you to be bold enough to recommend it to City Council in the first place, because now it comes from the Trust Commission, it'll come from the police department. So,
Okay. And I believe Commissioner Scholl has a follow-up question as well. And then Commissioner Barrett, do you have a question, or is your hand still up from?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, if we don't need a motion for this, then I can withdraw it. Is that what your recommendation is, City Manager? And also, sorry, are we going to be looking into what neighboring cities are doing with co-responder programs as part of your research? Fort Collins, are they more successful? That kind of thing.
Yes.
okay, so thank you for your question, Commissioner. Yes, we will be looking at what other cities do. We already know what they do, but we didn't include that, and they didn't include this in this PowerPoint, but in other PowerPoints, they have that information, because there's different programs and approaches. Fort Collins uses a different one than we do here in Loveland. So we will be providing that information as part of that. And I already know, in order to get this passed, I need to do more research than was presented the other night. So I guess I don't need to be told by the Trust Commission to do more research. I will be happy to share the budget document, because it's in a certain format. I'd be happy to share that with the Trust Commission once it's ready. And we're a couple months out for that right now.
Okay.
because we got all
And I'm
the-
happy to withdraw my motion.
Yeah,
thank
Catherine, I think we should withdraw, and then we'll just keep an eye on it for the next couple of weeks, and just, as we remember, ask questions.
And I appreciate that. I understand Trust Commission wants to see this as it moves along in the process. So we'll check in with it. And the first thing I want to have the Trust Commission see is what it looks like in a budget format document with the justifications, costs, benefit, pro cons, and all that kind of thing. So,
Perfect.
thank you.
And then Commissioner Scholl?
Well, since the motion was withdrawn, my comments no longer germane. So, but I would like to ask, since if we're moving on to other subjects, the question that's on the agenda was, what suggestions can we run with? I mean, which I interpret kind of, what is our reason for being going forward? And so I kind of would like to have that discussion too, if we can, because I do think that's important for us in the remaining time that we have.
Okay. And then Jessica, I see you. I do have Sarah and Aaron ahead of you. So I just want to let you know. Sarah, you're next.
Hey guys, so first off, the sound is so much better this meeting, and that's awesome. But I would just like to point out that we're 16 people who volunteer our time in Loveland, and I think there's a lot of pressure put on us, and we shouldn't take that to heart, because we have gotten a lot done for being a group of 16 people. We've come a long way. So I just wanted to point that out again. And, I think, Jordan, you did a really good job, and we need to define our direction, but we've made progress.
Perfect. Thank you. Aaron? Not to throw you
No,
off
it's
guard or anything.
I'll just echo what everybody said. I think you did a fantastic job. And I appreciated City Manager speaking up for the entire Trust Commission during that meeting. So thank you. And I was going to ask Commissioner Vic, were you able to watch that meeting? No, okay, because I wondered if you followed Foley's comments toward the end about kind of maybe his broader vision. I kind of got lost, but I wondered if it made sense to you or not. Just so,
I have not seen his,
Okay.
I just read what,
okay,
I think Commissioner Barrett had put out an email that had his comments in it. So I'll have to walk it, but I mean, rest assured, when we show up, we're gonna deal with the mentally health people.
yeah,
In some cases, obviously a little bit better than the police department. And in some cases, I'll have to brag about my employees a little bit better than the co-responders. So, I mean, we do, our group that we have that works 24/7, and we do a heck of a job dealing with what those guys and gals have to deal with and see all day after day after day. So, I mean, if anything else, everything falls apart, budgets don't happen, I promise you we'll be there.
right.
So.
I know you will be. Thank you.
And then Mike, I can either have Catherine re-forward that email to you, or I can figure out a way to get some sort of a summary your way about it. Okay. Jessica Schneider.
Thank you. Two things. One, I wanted to thank you, Jordan, Chair Pryor, for your presentation. I thought it was amazing. I know a lot of folks have said that meeting and the response went a lot better than our first quarterly report as far as response is concerned. But personally, I think you did a great job, and I felt the response was a little bit lackluster. So I just want to say that I really appreciate you. Second question, I guess probably for City Manager Adams. Is there a reason that we only work with Summit Stone in regards to mental health co-responders, or is that something that other organizations could be competing for in a procurement sense? So I just wanted to learn a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Yes, City Manager.
Thank you, Commissioner. A good question. I'll have to research that one a little bit because we've had a strategic alliance and partnership with Summit Stone for a number of years. And so the question is there other providers, if we want to increase capacity or change providers, is there a way to do that? Is that what kind of the question is?
Well, not even like to necessarily change, but are other organizations like available? Could we work with other organizations? Could other organizations work with Summit Stone? I'm just trying to understand the lay of the land as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, because I know other organizations work with Summit Stone and they have alliances themselves because we use some of the specialized services that come that way. Maybe if we can talk a little more about what you might have in mind there sometime.
Sure. I honestly don't have anything in mind. I just wondered how that works. Like, is it Summit Stone or nothing? Or, can other businesses that provide mental health services compete with them or not? I'm just trying to understand how it works.
I'll get back to you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And then as we continue real quick, I do want to actually echo what Mike said earlier. We do have under, discussing our report to council. I think we've talked a lot about what stood out as far as, how it went and everything, but what suggestions can we run with? Was there anything that they said that we can take and actually apply to the group? If not, that's okay too. But that's kind of the direction I think we need to head before we start talking about, let's talk Loveland and the survey and all of that stuff. So Tara Hildebrand's next, and then Sarah will we'll have you after.
So I wanted to thank you and Steve Adams, because I really appreciated when you spoke up too. Like, I even wrote a little note like, thank Mr. Adams. So thank you. And I thought, Jordan, you did a great job. I thought the one thing that really surprised me is it seemed like all of the counselors were on board with the educational piece, which I was so I thought like that is something that it seemed like all of them were supportive of us figuring out how to educate the community. And then I also stayed on and listened to the DEIB portion too. And they did do a really professional job. But I remember at the end, it was like two women, and I don't know if they were just the only two that were the spokesperson or if they had a much larger group. And then I also remember them saying they had like 2.5 years behind them. And that was one of the council's thing. I know they talked to you about herding cats. And at first I was like, what? And then I thought of myself and I was like, okay, it is kind of like herding cats, but I kind of appreciate that that you allow all the commissioners to really speak up, and we do all come from very different parts of the community. And I think that's one thing that really lends to us, but it does take us a little bit longer maybe to get to the point. But that was kind of my takeaway, is that we are unique in that there's 16 of us, and it's hard to be really concise, really quick when there's 16 different voices. And then, but it did seem like they were on board with us trying to figure out how to work the educational piece into our program or whatever.
Perfect. Yeah, which is something that I think whenever we start talking about the Let's Talk Loveland page, that we can toss around some ideas for that. I put some stars next to the word education. Sarah, you're next.
So mine kind of leads into the Let's Talk Loveland, but I was surprised at, I can't remember, one of the reactions was very like, what even is this? And that was surprising to me. So I'm curious how many in the community also are going to feel like that. But I do think it is a good resource, and a lot of the other the other guys kind of knew what it was and knew that it could be beneficial, and also were supportive of the surveys. And I think that'll help us direct where we go and what we need to do and where we need to focus, is just seeing what the community wants from us. That's what we're supposed to do, figure out where we can help find the missing trust.
Thank you. Yeah, I do think that a big challenge that we're going to have to navigate with that page is how do we get that information out to other people, which was something that was discussed in the report, where I had even mentioned that I know that we've talked about with the survey, having to figure out other ways besides Let's Talk Loveland to be able to get that out there. So kind of seems like we're headed towards the next agenda item. If anybody else has anything extra to add, you look like you may have had your hand up there, Ron.
I guess I was just going to say that as we look at why did this go better? And I think that the fact, Jordan, that you had been through it once before, it was a major part of it. You were much more experienced. I think that the emphasis was on all of the things that we had done, as opposed to, which was action steps. Even though there was the questions from the council about, well, where's your research and whatnot, that's normal. I mean, the city council's job is to keep from spending a nickel, but have everything running perfectly smooth. So we come in there and try to convince them, and it's going to be an adversarial relationship. If we went in there and they accepted everything that we recommended, I'd be really suspicious as to what's going on. I don't know whether anybody knows what the approval rate of Congress is. They're not elected to be approved. The only time they're elected to be approved is if they're running for office, and then they're out there to be approved. So there is an adversarial position, and I think you did a great job of emphasizing the positive, all the input that we had gotten, and working towards the survey, the communication, the things that were key to trust. And I think that that's the key. And I think somebody had a song, emphasize the positive, or accentuate maybe.
I do want to just say before you go, Aaron, I do want to thank Mike Scholl specifically, because Mike gave me some tips, and I had them written down on a sticky note stuck to my laptop, basically in kinder words than this, but shut your trap, don't answer too much. And it really worked out. So thank you, Mike. So, Aaron.
I can appreciate adversarial, but I do know Council Member Fogel is one of the rudest human beings that I've ever had exchange with in my professional and personal life. And that's not adversarial, that's just plain rude.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
So, and I appreciate the the compliment, or and I'm glad you found my advice useful. But I kind of wanted to just move and kind of, before we get into the Let's Talk Loveland, I really do want to have a little bit more of a deeper discussion about our kind of reason for existing and how we're going to use our time, because I feel like Mr. Sarner brought up kind of a point. If our purpose is to do a survey, I'm not sure. I tended to agree with him, which is a little shocking for me. But part of the thing, we came into this, like, I think fundamentally, if we're going to achieve trust in the community, we need to find some accountability for what happened, for the incident that occurred. And I think we're still waiting, and I want to remind everyone, and I know probably Commissioner Walsh would agree with me, we're still waiting for the internal affairs report. And I kind of think that really the substance of what we're here for is, until we can kind of dig into that a little bit, then I'm not sure that really, I'm not sure really what our purpose truly is. And so, I mean, I want to bring that up. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, the report that was done by the law firm, the Jensen Hughes. They had some very specific recommendations in there. And part of what I want to know, and from an accountability perspective, is what has council taken up related to that? And when do they plan to have that discussion? I mean, particularly from a sustainable kind of accountability loop, if you have not our commission, but the police advisory board, they brought up very good points about how that board has been managed, and how the police interaction with the public through that is a commission, not an ad hoc commission, but a commission with the intent to kind of get public input, how that's been used, and how that's been managed over the years. I think those are really fundamental, critically important things for the discussion that we're having. And so, because, and I say this, and I apologize for droning on, but a lot of the other things that we're looking at, I think, I don't want to devalue them, but I want to be able to place them in the right position, or the right, in a lot of them, it's not necessarily things that we should be doing. There are lots of other commissions that the city has. The city manager has, is the highest paid public employee in the city of Loveland, and the city manager, they have responsibilities, to manage and to take care of these things. So I don't want to feel like we're in a position where we're kind of assuming, kind of, taking on the responsibilities that should be done by others, while kind of avoiding what our core mission is. So with that, I'll yield back the balance of my time, but
You're fine. So real quick, Catherine Barrett, before I let you go, and then Natalie, I do want to just say that it was the last meeting that we had together as a group. We kind of did discuss that a little bit, and I think what we were trying to accomplish was figuring out from the survey what other directions we can go, since we are waiting currently on the IA report, and kind of have some roadblocks where we can't go a whole lot further forward with all the Karen Garner stuff going on at the moment. So that was, to my knowledge, of kind of what our next steps were going to be, if that helps in any way. Catherine Barrett.
Thank you again. I'm so sorry to keep taking the mic, but speaking of Mike, the PCAB has the police department group that's working on that includes a lieutenant and assistant chief of police. And they're looking at the 5 recommendations that Jensen Hughes made, and they've already pretty much rubber stamped 1 through 4 of those recommendations. There's been serious movement toward making that a better body in every aspect, except the most important one probably to all of us, which is to have them become more of an accountability board for the police department. That discussion is coming up on Wednesday. If you guys are able to attend that meeting, I will send that meeting info to Jeffrey, and would love to have your input there and your presence there. It's like, I think 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the police station, but they're going to be discussing that very meaty piece of it. So, and as far as the where do we go from here? We seem to have a lot of support for the survey. Andrea Sampson even said that, even if we learn that that city council is the problem, we need to know that. We need to act on that. And I thought that was very valid. There are other things aside from the Karen Garner case that we can and should be working on. There are other areas that are causing distrust in this community that we can work on. We can make sure that people are educated, through the Let's Talk Loveland page. And then finally, my concern with that night was that all the questions about meeting attendance for our group and how many people who have resigned. I had absolutely no idea where several commissioners were coming from in that, why they care so much that we had 2 people resign very early on, and that, we have some people attending via Zoom rather than in person. So we couldn't get the whole group for a picture. I didn't understand that. If anybody has any insight to that, I'd love to hear it. That's all I have. Thanks.
I think there are just some people on council who like very odd, specific questions. I think that's really all it boils down to.
Thanks.
Sorry, did I say that too loudly? Natalie, you're next.
Thanks. So, for different outcomes, I agree with Mike about kind of focusing on, maybe I would say wrapping up the investigation that we did do. I do think we should finish that topic before we start going, now what else should we do? Because it's just going to get lost in there. And I do think that our commission ends in the end of September. But I disagree with where we're at in terms of the Garner investigation. I can write a report today. I've been paying attention to every presentation. I've been paying attention to all the questions. What I thought was a problem, and that it was going to be something else. And I know there were people at our first meeting who said, they wanted to hear from Tyser, what took, how come you didn't read your email? And I did too in the beginning, but the picture that, it's almost like, I don't know what that eye condition is called when, you have the center is blocked out, but you can see the periphery. And I mean, a lot of my work is involved in putting a story together based on the peripheral information. And so it's a common theme to me. All the people that came and presented us told us a bit of the story. And so I really think we can wrap up. And I actually have some recommendations based on what we've learned. And I don't mean to be all lawyery about it, but I'm being all lawyery about it. It's about communication, and all of law is about communication. All cases are about miscommunication or good communication. Transactions are about communication. So, I mean, I was a couple times, that's why I was like, oh, I got cut off right at the important part of the discussion, because I was putting the story together through all these meetings. And I just think it's about, pulling, let's pull this stuff together and talk about it. I mean, it's just my opinion. Like I was really happy when Shane voiced up that night when we were talking about the paramedic response to something, because I value your experience and your professional experience and your voice. And the only thing I do bring to this is my experience as a lawyer. So I know people might be like, oh, you're a lawyer, you're going to do this or that. That's all I have to offer. And it's just a little bit. So I'm ready to do that whenever people are interested in talking about it. But it's not a 3-minute thing.
Right.
And it's a study session. And I think that it would be more comfortable if Steve and if City Manager Adams and City Attorney Garcia were not present, because it's about how, my recommendation is how you guys can communicate better. It's not a criticism, it's an observation. And it's a simple story. So
So let me ask you this then. If we were to, towards the end of the next agenda item, take a little bit of time because we'll need to figure out agenda anyways. If we were to make that an item for the next meeting, would you be able to have a report and be able to present to us as a group for, say, 35, 40 minutes about your findings, and we can have a discussion about it and see how we feel about it as a group?
when's your next meeting? The 18th?
Yes.
Cannot do it that one. I can do it the next one, though. No, I can't do it the next one. I can do it before, I'm gonna have to video in on the 18th.
Or if you'd rather do the first week of June.
The 16th?
It'd be the 16th.
Correct. There is no meeting on the 30th.
Okay,
I will be out of town, so.
okay, what's the next one? 16th? No, 16th, I'm just gonna be on video. So, and there's none on the 30th, so when's the next one? June?
June 6th.
How about June 6th?
Okay.
No, it's not. I mean, it's actually, I'll kind of put it real simple, is what happened is the city came out and they were like, transparency. We're all going to be transparent. And Tyser kept on saying it like 10 times in every sentence, and city manager used it, and, it was throughout, whenever people were commenting on it, and transparency means something. That's transparent. And it was also at a time when the nation was talking about transparency, and we were seeing other communities be transparent and give information. And the cities does when lawyers consult with their clients, they give a range of responses. And I think in our experience here is that we're just seeing a non-disclosure response for everything. And, then just say, we're not going to disclose everything. Don't say we're going to be transparent and then don't be transparent, because that's where the disconnect is. And it's just that simple. It's like, be honest. There's nothing wrong with the truth. You can say the truth. You can say this, like, shock, whatever the thing is, truth is fine. So that's what my report's going to be. But I think we have, and I do believe that the evidence needs to be in our record, and we do have that.
Okay.
So, but I'll talk about that in June.
Cool. Well, then, yeah, we'll have you down for June 6th, and then most likely next meeting, we'll probably finalize all the stuff that we need for the Let's Talk Loveland page anyway. So we'll probably make that the big agenda item. Yes, the last question goes to Merlin, then we're going to move to the next agenda item.
This is just a quick comment.
Okay.
I understand what Natalie's saying completely, but when cases are in litigation and nothing has been solved, nothing has been finalized, there's a lot of people that can't say what they'd like to say because they can't. And there's nothing that anybody can do about that. I mean, that's the way the law is. And so there's tons of things that we can't do that we would love to do, but they can't do it or they're going to be in trouble. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, sure thing. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next agenda item, you guys, which is about the Let's Talk Loveland page. Yes, City Manager Adams.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to be clear, council not only appointed you to this commission, they appointed myself and our city attorney to this commission. We're at every meeting. If you want us to not be in a meeting, you're going to have to make a motion that excludes us. I'm going to need to take that to our city council to approve. So
If I can make this clear, I'm happy for you guys to be here. I was looking forward to actually being able to have conversations with you. But the request for that to happen. I don't know if we ever heard back from you guys in terms of whether you wanted to be interviewed or whatever. So I don't have a problem with you being here. It's nothing, you know, it's not critical, it's an observation. And so, I mean, it's not, I'm going to say mean things about you, or I'm going to, you know, accuse you of anything, you know, in that way. It's just if you're not comfortable doing it. And I say that because I know that both of you elect to have your reviews in an executive setting. So it's really out of courtity that I'm saying that if it makes you uncomfortable. I
Natalie,
mean,
if I may, just because I
Yeah.
do want to just rein it back in. I think regardless, they're probably going to have to be there. Even if we made a motion and didn't have them there, they can still watch the YouTube video on it. So if we're going to say it, we might as well say it with their chest, you know? So, which that is completely on you guys if the day comes and you guys aren't here, which I don't think that'll be the case. So, yes.
I think there were a couple of other things that maybe we had talked about briefly or we had emailed. Okay.
Would
I'll-
you like to just, I'm
No.
not recalling right now, but if
No,
you'd like to just,
I'll write it down.
oh, okay. Yes.
Just a suggestion. I'd like to kind of have a little bit more time to have this discussion. I mean, we're still giving ourselves, if I'm reading the agenda correctly, an hour or more at this point to talk about the Let's Talk Loveland and the survey. And so I'm not sure why we're rushed, because I had a kind of a follow-up to kind of Commissioner Walsh's comment, you know, that I'd like to kind of, I would like to kind of continue this discussion a little bit longer, and we still have plenty of time to talk about the survey, because I do think they're fundamental to kind of what we're here for. So you know, it's at the wishes of the board. I'm just one among 16. So,
Well, more so we were at a point where, I mean, I don't have anybody else's hands up. So I mean, if you have something that you would like to talk about, you are more than welcome to bring it up.
Jessica, you need to unmute.
Oh, hi. Is it okay to talk now? I wasn't
Wow. Okay. Jessica, then Tara.
I can wait. No, Tara first. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll wait
Tara.
for her. Thank you.
Well, I have to say I'm in agreement with Commissioner Schultz on this one. I feel like this is really important, and I feel like this kind of speaks to Councilwoman Sampson's point. But I feel like they did make it clear in the creation of the commission that we were to first begin with the Karen Gardner incident and then maybe open it up to others. And I don't feel like we've wrapped it up. But I do feel like with what we have, I think Walsh's recommendation is really valid and would be really helpful. I know to me, because I feel like when we do move on to other things, it's really easy to forget about the importance of what we all started with. And I feel like it is super important to the whole creation of our board. And I personally almost feel like it's almost a manipulation to try to like get us caught up in all these other things without clearly marking where we're at before we begin to move on. And even if we can't fully finish the Karen Gardner investigation or recommend it, whatever we're doing with that.
We're not an investigative
Right,
body.
I know, as soon as I said it, I remembered. But I think I would really appreciate to hear it kind of all summed up in one story. And then I think it would make it easy to make some recommendations off of that. And because I also feel like with the board that I sat with for the 5 Jensen and Hughes recommendations that the police are taking on, I was pretty disappointed. It's wrapped up, the one that we were doing. But there was zero change for the BIPOC community on that plan. And we must have brought it up every single meeting. And all the things that we brought up, I don't think any of them made it into the actual policy changes. And that was disappointing, but they had community input. And so I feel like I would love for something to be written, documented, turned in, that says what our input is, because I think that has power within itself. So that's my.
Jessica and then Mike.
Thank you, Chair Pryor. One, I want to offer my support for Commissioner Walsh's offer to do this for us. Quick clarifying question for City Manager Adams. My understanding is that you and City Attorney Garcia are appointed liaisons. Are liaisons officially like a part of the group, or how does that work?
Councilmember Schneider, we are not voting members. We do not contribute other than when you ask for questions or support. However, under the ordinance, we are written as part of the group. So we are, I believe my attendance and the city manager's attendance at each meeting is expected.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, actually for City Attorney Garcia, you did send out an email last week about how we are to communicate with one another via email, and that communicating through the facilitator, Jeffrey Range, is not okay. So can you help me and I guess all of us understand like what is appropriate legally?
Yes, please, Mr. Garcia.
I'm happy to do so. One of the things that you have to remember is that when there is a meeting of 3 or more commissioners, you are subject to the Colorado open meetings laws. When there's information being sent to Jeffrey for him to gather information so that he can bring it to that meeting or provide it to Chair Pryor, that's not a problem and that's not a violation. What you have to think of when communication begins, when there's a meeting, it's when there's engagement. It's when you're all switching ideas. And what began to happen is that Commissioner 1 would respond to Commissioner 2 through facilitator Range, and then Commissioner 2 would respond to Commissioner 3. Commissioner 3 would respond to Commissioner 1. All of a sudden you have engagement. When you have that engagement, you're having a meeting potentially. That's the difference.
Okay. I don't need to take up much more time, but so what is the line and what do we do? We're all volunteers. We aren't all lawyers. So can you help clarify?
Commissioner Schneider, the line is engagement. So it's when there are 3 or more people engaging in a discussion rather than just transmitting information. So when it turns into a debate, when you take information from Commissioner 1 and Commissioner 2 applies that to send it out back to everybody, and then Commissioner 3 responds and sends it out, all of a sudden there is a debate among more than 2 members. So that's really what you're looking for when there's an exchange of ideas and you're trying to make a determination and there are more than 2 commissioners.
Just one more thing and then I'll stop. What is the difference? Because there was some debate about Chair Pryor having sent out something in his individual capacity, a survey that had a similar back and forth, and that was not flagged. So can you help me understand the difference?
If the commission was activated, there probably wouldn't be a difference. I'm not sure. It may just not have been caught at that time. But we all work together to make sure that we're not doing that. Sometimes I catch them. Sometimes I let them go on because I see an end coming very quickly. And sometimes there's just a few exchanges, and by the time I get in there, it's done. So I don't need to interject myself.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Scholl.
Thank you. I want to go back to Commissioner Walsh's point, and in terms of kind of the discussion with the city manager and the city attorney, and I think I'm more than happy for them. I mean, in my opinion, I think it suggests kind of the value that the council put to this commission, that they appointed both the city manager and city attorney to be here, and I think we should take that to heart. And I think with that said, from my experience, I came into it with some preconceived notion, and but tried to understand and listen and to kind of absorb the information to help kind of guide the truth or the recommendations that we were thinking of. And it wasn't clear to me what the procedures that the police department had in place to deal with situations like that. And I think Chief Ticer had come and and was forthright and spoke about kind of the blue team and the procedures and how they manage and how they handle all those things. And I think that was great. I think all of that was enlightening to me as a commissioner, and I think to the community, to understand what happens, when these things occur. However, the point that's always rubbed me kind of wrong was that system broke down. There was a fundamental breakdown in the systems that were in place to provide transparency and openness with the public. And I'm not saying, when you're in a community of this size and you have a police department, things are going to happen. I think it's unrealistic to ask anyone for perfection, to say that the police department, in all times, every police officer is going to act, you would hope, you strive for that. And I think it's especially important when we give them the power that we do in the community but I'm also a human being, and I realize that things will break down. And in that instance, it did. And I still have not been satisfied with the understanding, with the answers that have been given as to why the systems broke down and led to the outcomes that it did. Why was it 9 months, for before it came out into the public, in a year, and while the police officers were still on duty? And so part of the question that I want to start to ask is, when was the information presented to you? Is the city, we looked at the organizational chart, and the city manager is the highest ranking public official above the chief of police. And part of it is, what I don't understand is what was the circumstances when that was presented to you, and what was the response, and where was the breakdown? And it may not be, and I'm not saying that to be accusatory, there may be some reasons that it occurred and came out in the way it did, but if we're ever going to build trust, we have to have accountability. And I think that's part of what leaves me just deeply frustrated with this process and with the commission, because we can't get to that. And I don't want to speak for Commissioner Walsh, but I feel like we get up to kind of a wall and then it just stops. And you can understand like the processes and the procedures that occur and how we do in the reports. But again, it's like, it's where did the gears kind of malfunction? And why was, and what I'm trying to understand is, are the procedures so fragile that they can be that easily manipulated, or was it something that was outside of, circumstances that occurred that we can kind of understand and we can kind of make corrections, so that it doesn't happen again? Or was there something more nefarious that occurred, or some attempt to kind of to keep it from the public, to protect people, and I've not gotten an answer, a satisfactory answer to that question. And that's what really is, it bugs me, I guess. And so, I kind of, I think, and that's why I'm a little hesitant to kind of move on. It's like, how can we move on to ask other questions when we haven't answered the first question? And we have there's nothing suggests we will ever have an answer to that question. So to me, that's where I'm landing, and I appreciate the time.
Erin, do you mind? I think she has like an actual direct follow-up question. Is that okay? Yes, Natalie.
So I agree. But I think that they're very clear that they're not comfortable sharing that information for the reason that Merlin is expressing, because that's the position they're taking legally. The, you know, I understand what you're saying, Merlin, but there's not only one way to do crisis management for lawyers. And I'm going to use an example of I had a bank client who called me. One of their big landlord was their client, and the landlord's contractor was hauling out all this asbestos without, handling it properly. And it was like a 120 unit building. And all these, and it was right in the heart of like total Yuppie-ville. So there's like, 120 units worth of people that are watching asbestos being hauled out of a building without proper protection. In the reality, and it was outside, no one was under increased danger, but, people were worried about them going back into their units and stuff like that. The landlord did not want to say, it's under investigation, we can't talk, even though that was like the easiest thing for the lawyer to do. As the lawyer going, the easiest thing for you to do is don't say anything so that I don't have to do all these other things. But he didn't want to do that because he had 120 tenants with babies and children and a reputation. And he wanted to come clean. And what he wanted to do is say, I'm putting everyone up in a hotel until the entire building's been tested, et cetera, et cetera. And he wanted to own up to it. And so it was my job as a lawyer to help him fabricate that without, it's complicated because there's insurers involved that don't want you to say anything. And then there's all these other, bankers involved that don't want you to say anything. There's a ton of relationships, but the guy wanted to do the right thing. And at the end of the day, it was the right call because his tenants believed him, they were taken care of, and they moved back in when the problem had been addressed. So it's not an easy thing to do. It's much easier to say, we can't talk, and it's, I get it. And a lot of, people do that. But the way it works though is, and I'm sure this is how the city handles it, is you go, there's a range of responses. It then becomes a business decision, and the business decider is Steve. And so, how that all works, we're not going to ever find out what really happened, at least not before September. And so my reason for saying that is that I see, this is how legal advice works. You certainly, it's confidential. That conversation should never be given up there. When sometimes that happens, I'm always a little like, ooh, that's nerve-wracking, because then there's no privilege when you give legal advice up there. But I think that, the array of how do we want to handle this? It's actually a business decision. It's not a legal decision. The law gives bumpers and guardrails. So there's a lot of ways. And I honestly think, and I thought, all these terrible things happens, and it was either like purposeful or really dumb, in the police department, and whichever it was going to be was not a good answer. So I kept looking you're always looking for that red, where's the big, smoking gun? Where's the big problem? And a lot of times it's not a big problem. It's just communication. And that's why I think there are a lot of ways to do, manage public relations when there's been a problem. And I think what happened in our city is something went wrong at the police department, and there's a whole range of things. It could have been like bad actors, or it could have just been, people not doing a good job that day. And the city stood up there for days and said, we're going to be transparent. And then the ordinance gets written, and then people like me are like, I actually thought they wanted our help in telling the story of what happened. That's how, color me silly, but I thought they wanted us to help them tell the town what happened and use our credibility to say, it's not the worst thing in the world ever, and we're responding professionally and rationally. So I wasn't, coming out the gates, firing. This was the information I was just thinking we were going to get. Okay, let's start with the depositions. We'll see what's happening. I think even someone emailed me and it's like, why do you want the discovery? I'm like, because that's where we start, telling the story. And then there wasn't none. So I kept on like all these weird, so it's not that someone did anything wrong. It's just, do we want, as the trust commission, to recommend to them? I mean, at this point, to tell you the truth, what my recommendation is, just don't say you're going to be transparent, because it's really hard. It's a hard thing to do. Just next time say, we're a small town, we only got so much time and et cetera, and we just have to not say anything right now. And then people can at least believe you, because then when you don't say anything, you're doing exactly what you said you're going to do. But when you say you're going to be transparent, and then you're like, okay, right here, there's the information, then people are, that's the trust. That's the whole trust issue. And so that's for us to decide. I honestly think at this point, I would recommend that they just stay away from trying to hold themselves out as in transparency, because it's too much of a loaded word these days. It means something. It doesn't mean I'm a good guy and you should believe me, because there's all sorts of people that don't know you. And all right, sure, okay, yeah. But if you're telling me something, if you're telling me one thing and doing another, there's just no trust. And I just kind of think it's that simple. I would like the response to be better, but I think that might be asking too much for the various forces that are, upon them. They have shareholders to report to or to satisfy. But I think that's all it is. It's just, do we want to recommend to them, for example, if the city wanted to do better and be transparent, what I would recommend is that they put together a council of people that are more experienced with crisis management, that involves a team of lawyers and PR and, that is kind of what makes a crisis response team. And help them, figure that out, because it's a business decision. It's just like, if someone was going through a divorce and the lawyer said, just, burn the field.
Natalie, we have used quite a few examples. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
okay.
We're talking about divorce now. I'm
Okay.
I'm reining it back in. But I do think that some good points were made as far as potential recommendations. I see Jeffrey writing them down now. I do want to kick it over to Aaron, because I do want to at least keep us somewhat on time here. Aaron?
Well, I just wanted to add to Commissioner Scholl and Commissioner Walsh, as far as the story goes, from what I'm remembering, the entire time the public didn't know, and potentially not even the city manager's office, I don't know, about the incident that happened with Karen Gardner. The LPD knew. There's quite a few staff that knew. And what we know for sure is it was accepted behavior for many, many, many months. We know that to be true. And I don't know if it got to city manager's office. What I do recall in our blue team presentation, I think it was Deputy Chief, and I forget his name, shorter, broader fella. No. Butler. When I asked, had it ever gotten, when we looked at the flow chart of a blue team report, we asked, has that ever gotten to city manager to make that decision? He said, not in my career. I've not seen that. So that's information. That's part of the story. That leads me to believe he didn't look at the Karen Gardner. It didn't get to his desk to make that decision, is what that told me. I mean, I don't know that to be true, but Deputy Chief did say that in his career that had never happened. He had never known that to happen in a case. So that has to be part of the story that we know to be true up to this point. All I know is that LPD knew of the incident. I don't know that we as a public would have ever been made aware of it had they not sued the department in the city. So we know that to be true also. So something's funky in the department if that behavior is acceptable. And it was for a very long time. And again, we wouldn't know about it unless they sued. And so I'm with you guys. I still want to know who knew what, when, and why was that behavior accepted? And I don't want any more police officers that I use my tax dollars to pay that thinks that's acceptable behavior. I would like a poll in the PD. Who thought that was acceptable? Or who went and reamed your fellow colleague after that when you found out that happened? Because that's not acceptable behavior and it shouldn't be. And we know that that's truth. That's what happened.
Thank you. Yes, Patty.
I agree with what Aaron had said. Based on my background, which I'm not a lawyer, but I do know that law enforcement will close ranks when things come up. And the fact that 9 months went by, and it's very troubling that the individual officers were still employed at the PD, I believe they were. That's troubling. And part of my getting on this committee was to look not just at the Karen Garner issue, but at the police department and to see what could be done to actually help the police department, help the community to have more trust. And I think an explanation of that 9-month gap would go a long ways towards helping foster trust that the community could have back in its police department. And I think that almost like a culture that the police department has of its, sort of us against the world, that needs to be dealt with, and they really need to watch out for their own. And if something comes up that there is an officer that is struggling in any way, shape, or form, and it can be detrimental to the whole community, then the whole police department needs to get with that person and try to provide help. And that help may be they are no longer with the police department.
Ron, did you have a question? Oh, sorry, you gave me a look of like I wanted to talk. Okay, so kind of the stalemate that it seems that we're at here, that Jeffrey and I have kind of been going back and forth. It seems like Mike is saying that we don't really have an answer, while Natalie is saying that we do have an answer, which.
Can I just clarify? We're saying
Sure.
two different things.
Okay.
We don't have an answer to the question about LPD. In my view,
Mhm.
just mine, I'm the only one who expressed it so far. The issue of trust that I'm seeing broken has more to do with City Hall and LPD. Absolutely what happened at LPD is messed up. And if they don't fix it, there's gonna be a lot of lawsuits. And then they'll be the first city that ever fixed that, the culture problem. So it's two separate things. I'm saying in this investigation, I see, what I have the ability to comment on is the way the city attorney's office is working with executive branch. That's my experience. That's the world I come out of. It's the only thing. I'm not a cop. I'm not, know how it all works. I'm commenting on City Hall aspect of it and the April 19th or whatever day it came out going forward handling. If you look at my goal thing, it was the communication breakdown problem that created the trust problem, in my view. And I'm addressing that. These guys are talking about the actual incident itself that makes them loss of trust in LPD.
Gotcha. Okay, I appreciate the clarification thing because it was kind of, but I think I'm on the same page now. And yes,
And I don't know that I think we're looking at kind of the same coin from two different sides a bit. And I think that, you know, part of, I guess to Commissioner Walsh's point earlier, you know, if the city council, and I'm not maybe, I don't mean this isn't to be insulting, but I'm not maybe as cynical, you know, in terms of the use of transparency, because I do think my experience is the city is far more transparent than I think people give it credit for. And I say that, and I think it's it's a harder question when you've been in it and to understand it. And I think that the city, you know, and I don't say that there's some kind of huge problem. I think there are issues that arise. But I think in this instance, I think given the importance and given what occurred, I mean, I even look at from a recommendation standpoint is that, you know, city council could decide to release the internal affairs report. They're not beholden to the opinion of the city attorney. I mean, with all due respect to Moses Garcia, I mean, they could choose to, if in the example that they gave, or that Commissioner Walsh gave, you know, if the council says, we want to be transparent and we're going to be fully transparent and release the information, and we are going to kind of, we'll deal with the outcome from a perspective of full transparency than from you know, the other end of that spectrum. And I think, to me, I think that's, I think the point that Commissioner Walsh was trying to make, and I agree. I mean, I think that you know, in a situation like that, I think the more you withhold, even well-intentioned, I mean, because I don't question kind of that they're doing it, you know, that his motives or any that they're I think they're doing it for well-reasoned, you know, in their view, very well-reasoned, you know, actions. But I think I look at it, if you really want to be, you know, fully transparent, just let it out and deal with it, you know, put the information out and let them kind of the marketplace of, you know, start to kind of dissect it and review it. And I thought that was our role from the get-go, was to kind of take that, understand what the breakdown was, you know, where the breakdown occurred, you know, whether or not this is an issue, whether it was whether it was an isolated incident, you know, the exception, or whether or not it's the rule. I've not felt comfortable, you know, and I as much as I appreciate that, you know, everything that, you know, the police and their willingness to come and kind of discuss, you know, I still am left with some kind of fundamental questions about that would never, I don't feel like have ever been fully answered. So.
Did you say city council?
Yeah.
I have Catherine Barrett next to
The city council could make the decision. I mean, I'm assuming.
Catherine Barrett.
Thank you, Chair Pryor. I agree with everything that everyone is saying. We're not going to have answers on the Garner case until the IA report is released. But I think that, you know, trying to get it back to the LTL page, that would be one way of telling the public that the IA report is completed. It is not being released because the city has concerns about, you know, all appeal processes being exhausted before it can be released. And probably say that a whole lot better than I did just then, but letting the public know, being transparent with, this is what's going on with the Garner case. In the meantime, what else can we look at? What else is on your mind? We're going to stay on this until we get answers, but what else can we look at for you? And that's where I think the Loveland, Let's Talk Loveland page is going to come in handy. That's where the survey is going to come in handy to guide and direct us to, you know, what we need to be looking at. while we're stalled here.
Thank you. Yes. And then to kind of piggyback off of that before I let Tara go, we do need to get to the next agenda item, you guys. I do think that we've had some good discussion today. Again, we are going to have a fantastic presentation from Natalie on June 6th. You are typing up the report and presenting facts, and we're going to have a discussion based off of what you have.
I'm offering to tee up the discussion so that we can, so that people can chime in and have it.
Okay.
Because it's not, here's what I think, and I'm, assigning myself the role of this, that it's to bring this to a discussion point. And then report is, no, the group decided, just don't say transparent, or the group decided to recommend look piano. So I think that I would say it's more discussion points. And we've kind of had this discussion tonight. But, maybe a couple more people will formulate an opinion in the next 4 weeks as benefiting from this conversation. This actually is the conversation that I envisioned.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I still think that we need to move forward. I will let Tara be the last person on this agenda item, but we do need to move forward.
Thank you. I agree. Well, the whole trust issue thing that we were talking about, I was just, I've yet to actually hear the LPD or the city own the mistake. They will let you know that there was a lawsuit. They'll let you know that they lost in court or in the bargaining, whatever happened. We know there was, we know legally through the courts that there was bad behavior, but never once has any of the city personnel or the LPD said our officers made mistakes. Every police officer that got up and spoke with us talked about how awesome their department is and how awesome their officers are. And I just think until there's actual words said by the LPD that they did not support that behavior and that they recognize that it happened in a real way, I just don't think that trust is possible, at least for people like me. And I think the whole reason why I did the Ray Mendoza, I think maybe maybe Counselor Sampson thought it wasn't really a serious thing, but I feel like by the LPD actually having to stand up there and give him something and tell him thank you for letting us know that our officers were making mistakes out there, would go a long way. And I don't know if I fully believe that a LPD officer would get up there and actually support that. And what Aaron was saying at the last meeting, does the LPD support what Mr. Mendoza does? We don't know because we never heard. We only hear that they're awesome. So that's my 2 cents in the whole thing. And I feel like, I actually feel like Natalie, that I don't know that anything will ever change. And I feel like it would be better if the city and the LPD were just honest with what they can provide to the city. And I feel like we only do have 6 months. So we're not going to change the LPD or the city. But what we can do is educate our citizens as to what we can expect from the city, what we can expect from the LPD. And that does make you feel more secure because you know what you can expect. Right now, I feel like we're expecting something up here, but we're only getting what's down here. And a lot of it, it seems like, comes from the staffing issue. Like, they wrote this new policy for the Jensen Hughes, but they said that they can't implement it until they're fully staffed. And then you ask when that might be, and they all look at you like, never. So I feel like that's the reality, and we should work with reality.
Perfect. So with that, let's move on to our Let's Talk Loveland page. Catherine, you have the mock-up. I know that you sent an email, but I never saw a link in the email to the mock-up. You're on mute. She had sent Jeffrey an email, what, 2-3 days ago, 4 or 5 days ago? Is there any way that you guys up there could unmute her by chance? Thank you. Catherine, if you'll unmute real quick, just so we know that you're still with us. Okay, well, while we wait on that, I'm going to go ahead and I guess just move along with the, how are we wanting to handle commissioner bios? I personally think that the easiest way to do it is probably just have everybody email Jeffrey 2 to 3 sentences, or yeah, let's not make them too long. Just who you are, where you're from, and why you want to help. And obviously that doesn't have to be set in stone, but that's just kind of what I'm putting out there. If anybody has anything different, I'd love to hear it, but I don't think that we need anything.
Do other, is this consistent with other commissions? I was trying to look on the website. I mean, is this how how commissions do?
I believe that we would be the only
Pictures and bios
commission
in there.
with a Let's Talk Loveland page, correct? City manager? And then Gary, we'll get to you right after.
Sort of directly. I mean, there's topics that some of the boards and commissions work on where they have a web page, but as a group, to my knowledge, none of them have bios posted on themselves. A lot of the commissioners get a little nervous about providing personal information out onto the public. So that's not something the city requires. So if you're doing that, I want to make sure your eyes are open. We're not, we as a city are not saying you have to do that. If you want to share with the public, great, but we're not requiring it.
Yes, Gary and then Ron.
This topic comes as a little bit of a surprise to me, since I know of no other bios from any other commission. The handbook says nothing about bios, and I don't think it's needed. So I would be against producing bios.
Okay. Ron?
I'm not sure that the citizens care.
That's fair.
And I mean, we can put it out there and say, I'm an attorney. I mean, I'd rather say I'm a grandfather. And so if you decide to do it, I'll put something out there. I'm just not sure that it's going to make that much of a difference. They're going to trust us more because of our background.
Then, I mean, I don't think that we need a formal motion of any sort on this, but I just so I can survey the room. If you do not want to put a bio, will you please raise your hand for me real quick? That is majority of the group. Okay, that was easy enough. Thank you. Okay, well, that takes off that item. Yes, Catherine?
The link that Nicole provided to us has expired.
Gotcha. Okay.
Can't help you there.
Then we'll get in touch with her, and just so you know, for me, I don't know about Sarah and especially Jonna with the health issues she has going on, but I can meet up with you Wednesday this weekend. Just, we'll talk about it, I guess. Okay. Then if we're not going to do bios, then let's get to the fun part and talk about a survey for the community. I feel like that's such a dirty word in this group now. But yeah, let's talk about surveys. So yes, Erin.
So I guess first I wanted to find out, because there were online survey brought up, but then it was also brought up to potentially be visibly and physically out in the community with, say, a booth or just standing out front of the library with survey cards. Are we as a group up for both of those?
I personally would be willing to stand outside of a King Soopers or a Sprouts or the Loveland Library to collect information. Yes.
And I would be, if it was super, super short, because when I'm out and about, if I'm cruising to the library, if I'm cruising to King's and I'm popping around doing my business and I don't even have kids in tow. Okay? It would have to be quick. It would have to be a quick survey for me to give any time and attention to it. So I would be willing to stand out there and do that if it was very, very short. Otherwise, I would not.
Can I make
Yes.
a suggestion? So I just would suggest that, I don't know that standing out and kind of polling people is of that much use. I think part of it's for the reasons kind of that Commissioner Black had suggested. What I do think could be a value too is if you just like, I've seen before, like where there's just like business card like notices that have information, direct people to a website that you can hand out. Say, are you concerned about community trust? You know, go here and provide your opinion, or yeah, or QR code or something, and let people do it on their phone or at their leisure. You know, and I think if there was something in like the utility billing, because I mean that way it goes out to everyone in the community. Because and to your point earlier, I mean I know I was kind of the main survey critic, but it's not that I didn't, and it because I think again I just want to emphasize how you do the surveys isn't important as the data itself, and I think it's really important that we kind of understand that because a well-designed survey, I could do a well-designed survey and interview 36 people in the city of Loveland and get just as good of information as 500 responses on Facebook or better. I can have a better extrapolate that data than 500 or 1,000 people from on Facebook or some other, because so I think what we're trying to get is the community at large, I think, and not just kind of our tribes of people so I think to the extent that we can get it in front of as many people and people that aren't as generally engaged, I think the better off we'll be. So.
Well, and to your point, that's the reason why we had the discussions of doing it outside of the library or Sprouts or what have you, because if we do it solely on the Let's Talk Loveland page, it's going to be your internet savvy people. It'll probably get posted around on Facebook, and we know how that crowd can be. And that's going to be all that the data points are versus, outside of a King Supers, it might be a little bit more randomized. Or if we're able to get into the Reporter Herald, it might be a little bit more randomized. Or, it's the idea of trying to get as many different avenues, not just standing outside and collecting information, but having 3 or 4 different outlets for it.
Well, I'm going to volunteer you to stand outside because I don't want to.
Yeah, and then Commissioner Vick after.
One of the things, Commissioner Scholl, that I spoke to Nicole Yost with outside of an LPD meeting that we were in the same one, was the utility billing, and I don't get that bill. All of my stuff's online auto pay. So I don't see those. And I don't know how many people are like me. I don't like mail. So everything's auto pay online. I wouldn't get that flyer, so I wouldn't get a chance to see that. And I think for me personally, I want to hear from our BIPOC community, and we have some really good events coming up, like our Pacific Asian, that's coming up late May. That would be a great place for the survey.
It's happening several times in May and including at city councils.
Right, and so I think not just outside of King Supers or Sprouts, but some real specific events that are happening that maybe can get some real specific group.
That was actually a
I would like their
suggestion
input.
from Mayor Marsh, was for us to go to some of the Loveland events. I believe the one she mentioned was the Kite Festival.
Right.
But just going out there, in a very public setting with lots of different people doing that.
She did mention that the city can only have one booth, but maybe if the Trust Commission asked city manager nicely, he would approve us to have a booth at any of those.
Or we can always just make Jordan walk around with the clipboard. Yes, city manager, sorry.
So thank you for that. I was told to expect that question. Cole's kind of got me prepped on that. But one of the things, if you were looking at engagement, and this is something we did last year and something the police department's interested in doing this year, is there, as you know, there's events that are organized by our library. There's events organized by cultural services. There's events organized by Parks and Recreation, the DDA, and the Chamber of Commerce. And so there is a centralized group of people that are planning those. So all those events don't occur on the same day and time, because sometimes the events conflict with each other. But the good news is that that listing and where all those events are and what's going on is being mapped out, and in some cases is already available. So you could choose and pick and choose what events you might want to go out. And to the ones that are sponsored by the city as part of a budget process, if you want a table, I'll find the money. So we found with Nicole last year, she did an interactive process with people, and she had little ones and other ones and everybody coming around, and she was looking at budget and what would you do better in city and those kind of things, and just got people involved in the discussion. So you could do that kind of thing in a table or somewhere. And there's lots of traffic. Different groups are coming by there all the time. And you can pick which groups you would want to be at and which meetings you'd want to attend. But there's a lot of things. The Foot Lagoon series is out here on the Foot Lagoon. We got 3,000 to 4,000 people are at that event every Thursday night for parts of June. So there's lots of different, and we get great coverage from the Thompson Valley EMS while they're there, because there's so many people, we have to have ambulance there. So I think those are the kind of things we'd love to sit down and talk to you about, and Nicole is ready to do that because she is the coordinator of all of that for the city.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, I have a couple of different speakers. We'll go Shane, Merlin, then Catherine Barrett.
That was kind of where I was going to ask the question. One, the Let's Talk Loveland page, how do we know, I'm assuming somebody in the data world knows how much traffic comes in and off the city of Loveland page and how many clicks on board and commissions they get. Is that correct? Could we find that out potentially? However, we don't ask that because that's the key to all this, right? 80,000 people in the city of Loveland. If there's only 134 people a day clicking on the boards and commissions, it doesn't matter what we put out. It's not the thing. The other part of my opinion is that I don't know how well this has been advertised. I mean, we've been meeting, it's on YouTube. No one's banging down our door. So we either need to do something as controversial as LPD to get people here, or, right? There's nobody knocking on our door. So I'm sitting here going, okay, to go back to the earlier conversation, everybody either, here's my opinion. I think handing out business cards, trying to get survey, all that is all great stuff. I'm all for it. No one's knocking down our doors to get the truth, to get the answers. No one that I know of, other than a small group, and I say small group, 65, 70 people, I understand. And I empathize, I sympathize, but we don't have hundreds of people knocking on our door. So I don't know if we can just publish the Let's Talk Loveland and see what happens, just put a thing in there. Why do you hate the city? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Just to get traffic happening. I mean, I don't know, because I'm like Mike, the surveys can go one or two ways. They can go in our favor, but it's all going to be how we come up. I mean, cities pay people millions of dollars to develop very poignant surveys to extrapolate very poignant information. Right? And Ronald's commissioner's daughter. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there of that whole thing as we do Let's Talk Loveland. I mean, I've been on that page, looked at it here and there. I mean, it's great. All the avenues are great. I mean, we could put a little thing in the mail and in the auto payment things in the Let's Talk Loveland. I am not a fan of Facebook either, because we'll just get screamed at, or somebody from New Jersey will put his ugliness on our page. You know, if you want to hand out business cards, but like I said, as I sit here as a commissioner, I'm like, I tell people all the time, come. And here's the number one answer I get. Tyser's gone. Everything's changed. So that's my 2 cents for this evening. Love you all.
Merlin. Oh, sorry. City manager, was it a follow-up? Merlin?
Now I'm very confused. I guess what I initially thought was we should do as many avenues as possible, you know, with the page, and maybe some people go out and sit places and some people go to community events. But as I'm sitting here thinking about this, and I'm going, we are going to have to be very, very pointed on our questions. I mean, very pointed, because as Mike pointed out, surveys can kill you or can do great things for you. But if you make it long, it's going to be disgusting and people ain't going to do it. And so it's got to be short, sweet, concise, and easily questioned. I mean, not questioned, but answered. You know, when you give them a question, it's, I know that answer, you know, not, oh, I gotta sit and think about that. I don't know what would be the best thing, you know, that ain't what we want. We want deliberate, good, fast answers. And I don't have a clue how you do that. So it's just, that's my 2 cents. Cause I just think, oh man, cause I worked for the federal government for 40 years, and we had surveys and surveys and surveys and surveys. And I would guarantee you 90% of them went in the basket. So I don't know. I think I like the idea. I just don't know how to make it good, because it has
Spend
to.
up to $500,000, I think is what we said at the very beginning. My recommendation is we buy $500,000 of Girl Scout cookies, and that's how we send out our surveys with one question. Why do
Honestly,
you hate us?
Nowadays, it wouldn't take that many cookies.
yeah. Thank you. Okay, Catherine Barrett, please.
I have to follow that. Okay. So, gosh, just so that everyone knows, when we met with Nicole Yost, she is able to help us create the best survey questions that we possibly can. In my opinion, I think that the ones that Jordan came up with were pretty good. I think there were 4 very pertinent questions that got a lot of response, and that we should offer those as, you know, are these areas of concern, or is there an other categories so people can tell us what's on their mind. I totally agree that it's got to be simple and easily answered and quick. And I think, you know, my vision for this sitting at a table is just a 6-foot table with 3 chairs and a banner that says, you know, Citizen Trust Commission, and inviting people in with Girl Scout cookies or whatever to get them to the table, and then helping them fill out the survey. And you know, doing things like that at like there's a May 21st, it's a Saturday night, there's a Rialto celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Rialto. We could be there, we can be at the Foundry concerts. That seems to me to be a huge swath of our constituency here that we could reach just by sitting at one of those concerts. And then the other thing is when we had a traffic study done, I received an email from, I believe it was from Nicole or from the city somehow, that said, click on this link if you have anything to say to us about the traffic in your neighborhood. And I was able to click on that link and click exactly where my focus point was and tell them what I thought of that intersection. You know, there are things that we can do, and Nicole is willing to bend over backwards and help us with this. And we need more meetings of the subcommittee.
Yes.
Thank
Yes. And I think best course of action probably to, I guess, speed up the processes for our subcommittee to have another meeting, figure out the survey with Nicole, and then present it to everyone, you know, and have them vote on if they like it.
It's done, because if they're talking about all these things happening in May and June, it's
Yeah.
May. And either that or we're all gonna sit at the 4th of July Festival, which is at North Lake Park this year. Thank you very much, City of Loveland. And question people there. Other than that, our time is like, what now?
Right. So
My thought.
that'll be something, I guess, Catherine, that you.
Yeah,
need
the
to narrow
Foundry
down.
concerts are all through the summer. They go through August.
Right,
At the
but
county.
I'm just for the sake of, because I mean, we're on a time crunch anyways.
Right.
You and I will figure out some time with Sarah and potentially Jonna, and we'll get it done before the next meeting. City
And
manager-
can I just add, if anybody
Yes.
else wants to be on that subcommittee, we could use some help.
I have noticed a lot of people are not making eye contact with me right now. City Manager Adams, and then Tara, and then Ron Stoddart.
Real quickly for the group, the city this year is going to be doing the National Community Survey. There are 500 member cities across the United States that are in this database of surveys. It's a fairly extensive survey. It's done. We have not done it in a couple of years because of COVID. We're using a different provider this time, and there are some voluntary questions. And so one of the things Nicole will want to come back and talk to you all in your subcommittee and to the whole group is what questions, how's your water supply? How's your sewer supply? How's your roads? How's all these things? But there are some questions we can add to it to make it our own. And so part of that would be getting some recommendations from this group. This will be a statistically significant survey going out to about 2,800 of our community members, randomized, all that kind of thing, to get a feel for the whole city as a total. So that's coming up too. It's going to be during this later part time period in June time period, but May is when we're asking questions. So we'll show, if you can talk about that in your little subcommittee, that'd be great.
Perfect. Yes, I made a little note for that. Tara, and then Ron, and then we're going to be real short on time, but.
Okay, I'll be really quick. I agree with Commissioner Vick. Basically, I think what would be good about us being out in the community is then people have a face to put with the commission. And I know I do usually have kids in tow when I'm going to the grocery store, and I don't ever stop for the surveys, but I listen to them. And I always think oh, that person's really concerned about this issue. It stays with me, oh, this issue is being discussed in our community. And I kind of use it just as news information. But I think it does, it would put the commission out into the community. And I think that would be the most significance actually of the whole survey, because I don't think it's going to be a statistically significant survey. But I think even one question, really literally knowing me when I'm going to the grocery store anywhere, I'm on a time frame, and one question is about all I can handle. But I think we definitely I liked your I liked the questions you asked in your survey, just minus the school district, because that's not the city's
I'm used-
information.
in
But
Texas,
I think I've
yeah,
said that
sorry.
before, so sorry.
No,
But
you're
I
fine.
just think really literally one question that people can answer as they're walking through the doors into King Soopers or into the library. And then people who stop and discuss, I guarantee you the mothers are going to be listening as they walk by, and or at least mothers like I was or am. Okay.
It could potentially be, do you distrust the following? We have it all listed out. It can be one of those multiple choice where you can do multiple answers, and then there can be an answer at the bottom for either other, or, I don't have any distrust in any of this. I think Loveland's doing a great job if we want to condense it down that much. Ron?
Two real quick things. Number one, great idea. It is more important that they see us out there and that we have the sign that says Citizen Trust Commission. We care about your opinion. Whether they take the survey or not, or whatever the survey says, the very fact that they see us out there is going to be a real positive. The second thing, and last, is that we have a lot of organizations in this city, and I'm specifically thinking about the faith community, where there's got to be 5,000 to 10,000 people that go to church regularly in this town. So we send out the survey with a little blurb that we would like you to just stop in the lobby, narthex, whatever your church calls it, and take a very brief survey, because the Trust Commission cares about your opinion.
Thank you. And real quick, Aaron, before you go, I do want to just, because I we are running out of time. For the next agenda, I do have that the subcommittee for the Let's Talk Loveland page will present, what the survey will look like, as well as potential outlets, and have the logistics of all of that ready. And then another item that I have gotten multiple individual emails about is kind of our conduct as individuals outside of the Trust Commission, which is not a conversation that I really want to have, but I had probably about 6 different commissioners email me about that. So if you guys are okay with it, I think that should probably be our next 2 agenda items for the upcoming meeting. Yeah, how people are conducting themselves outside of the Trust Commission, yes. It's not trust me, it's not a conversation I want to have, but yes, Mike and his party. Okay, Aaron?
Yeah, my comment goes to that point. Some of these booths or events that we're at will probably lend itself to some longer, more serious conversations that we have citizens that actually have the time and want to engage with us. And that was something that I was going to bring up, that we cannot individually speak for the entire commission. And that's also a good time to gather information, and city council really wanted us to do that. So I guess we'd have to have some kind of mechanism to write down some of those notes if we're getting into a more lengthy conversation. I'm not going to put myself at a booth if I'm not willing to lend an ear to whomever wants to give me their input about the city. Just like your comment, we're here to listen, and I'm writing notes. You can actively see me writing notes, and I will bring this and share this with the commission. So I just think that's going to happen, and to prepare for that.
So for the next agenda, we will be having the subcommittee with Let's Talk Loveland presenting what the survey will look like in its entirety and the different outlets that we can go about, and work with Nicole as to how we want to get that out there, as well as individual conduct and group conduct outside of the CTC. I had multiple emails. If I'm remembering, do you want names? Sure. Okay. I believe Merlin emailed me about it. Jeffrey gave me a call. I don't remember who had talked to him about it, but somebody did. Catherine Barrett, did you email me about that? I didn't have it written down because I didn't think that I'd have to remember people's names.
Yeah. I don't know. What is that?
Okay, I move that we extend the meeting 15 minutes. Okay, we have a second. Okay, all those in favor of extending the meeting an additional 15 minutes, please raise your hand. Okay. So there were concerns with Commissioner Dreith's efforts to,
I'm
not
sorry,
entirely.
this is not the place to talk about this. I didn't give up my life and sit on this commission. So this is mute, dead point, no discussion.
So that was what the other agenda item was going to be about, was just as a group, if we could come together and figure out, what we can and cannot say, outside of this commission, how that affects people in those actions. Gary, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care what you're doing. I genuinely don't. But I do know that some people in this commission do, and it, should at least be
I
a
have never
discussion.
done anything representing the commission. Everything I've done and will do in the future is as a private citizen of the city of Loveland.
Right.
I think maybe if you want to put that on the agenda, and I agree with Gary, I think that would be an excellent research item for one of City Attorney Garcia's fine young attorneys, because that's a pretty big ask in a free country. So I agree. I understand, and it's a good conversation, but I think before we start having a private conversation about it, I think this, and particularly because from the city's perspective, This would have to be across all the commissions and city council. And so I think it would be appropriate if you put that on the agenda to start with a presentation from the city attorney's office.
Well, I don't need, I just want to jump in real quick. We're governed by the boards and commissions handbook. And I think in so much as whatever, because that does speak to the kind of the conduct or behavior that's allowed for commission in, am I correct? I mean, the commission handbook. And I think in so much as if there is some credible discussion that anyone on the commission is violating whatever rules that we're governed by, then I think it's worthwhile to have a discussion about that. And because I don't think that you know we are we're a community, you know, of trust. So I think we need to hold ourselves to a high standard. So I would kind of encourage the chair or the facilitator to look to the boards and commissions handbook as a guide to see if any of the behaviors that have been mentioned, which I have no idea what any of them are meet the, you know, or violate the criteria that are within that. And if it's not, I don't really care to waste our time on it. So that's just my opinion, but.
Yes, Catherine Barrett, and then.
Thank you. 1,000% agree, Commissioner Scholl. We are a commission of trust, and we need to be able to trust each other. Gary, I want you to know that I did not write any letter about anything that you did. I have no idea what people are talking about. But also, there was I made a comment in one of our first meetings that deeply offended one of the commissioners on board. And that person took the time to write to me personally to tell me exactly how it impacted them. And it made an impact on me. And I took that very respectfully. And I was honored that they approached me with that. That's how a trust commission, in my opinion, behaves. If you have something that somebody said that bothers you, you approach them with respect and find common ground and resolve it. My 2 cents.
Merlin?
Oh, my comment was on the email that Gary Dreiss sent to everybody. And the comment was made about different city employees and his comments about them. And then he also commented about the city councilman, which I didn't think was an appropriate email, whether it went to all of us or any of us. I guess maybe I was the only one that read it.
So, thank you, by the way. So I like Mike Scholl's suggestion. City Attorney Garcia, would it be you who I would email for that handbook stuff? Because I don't, it is? Okay. Okay, then I'll, my email is so overfilled with everything, I have no idea to tell you.
This came out before the last commission meeting, about 5 minutes before we met.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Gary, I apologize for putting you on the hot seat. So.
I don't remember that email. We'll have to.
I have it here if anybody wants it.
Yes, could you please read that? I'd appreciate it.
This is email from Gary Dreiss to CT Commissioner and Jordan Pryor. I'm sorry that I was unable to attend the 4-4 CTC meeting. In reading over the minutes for the meeting, I read something that I was totally against. There was a statement in the minutes that the CTC discussed asking council what direction they might want to go. I believe that all commissioners are smart and intelligent, and we can determine in what direction the CTC should go. If you go into the next briefing to the council asking them what direction the CTC should go, you will be driving the last nail into our coffin, and we will not come out of that council meeting as a commission. Council will vote to disband us on the spot. The minutes also talked about the need to look into council and their actions. They have lost the trust of the citizens of Loveland. This is a very tricky situation that I don't know how the CTC can talk about at our meetings with Adams and Garcia in attendance, as they will be reporting to certain members of council before we even exit the room. Within an assault allegation against Adams, counsel should have placed him on leave immediately pending an investigation. There are examples all over the country where this has occurred. Yet our counsel turns a blind eye and does nothing, hoping that it will go away. Feel free to share with all commissioners. Gary Dreith.
Yeah, I think we're all just kind of starting to feel the wear of being in this. Yes.
Well, I'm just wondering what specifically in that email that you had issue with as far as conduct is concerned.
Making comments about people that work for the city and also stating how our city manager has an assault allegation against him.
I mean, I had the same kind of questions that Merlin Thompson did. I mean, I put a phone call in, and I know Steve's really busy guy, just to see, hey, what type stuff, just because I'm kind of I don't know if it steps over commission boards, like Commissioner Walsh says, I mean, they're stating a lot of opinions in there. However, it did go to the entire commission, which sets it into potentially, right, a core request. I mean, there's a lot, that's a loaded, smoking, lot of stuff in there when it comes down to. But that's the fun of, well, that was my big question. I mean, there's assault allegation. I mean, why is this not in the news? Why does this person know it? Why does the commission now know it? Why? I don't want to be pulled. Yeah. So anyway, that was my concerns too. But at the same token, we're somewhere in between market and responsibility. My thought.
Is there an assault allegation against our city manager?
Yep. Commissioner Black, there is an allegation. There is.
I don't know. In my opinion, he's just stating a fact. I don't know.
I mean,
That was just stating a fact.
I understand that it might have, I guess, come off as a little, I would say maybe aggressive, but not even really, but just, I thought we were talking about something completely different whenever you had emailed me, and so I apologize, but, I think, I guess maybe moving forward, if there are things that are said through, whenever emails get forwarded from Jeffrey, we just talk to each other one-on-one. I do know that really early on, I had said something that had offended Shane, and we had a conversation about it and, talked it out like men and got it figured out, and it was all good. And now Shane's my buddy. So, I guess that would just kind of be my advice moving forward, is that if that does happen again, maybe you two have a conversation about it, just kind of understand where you're both coming from. Go ahead, Tara.
My 2 cents. Gary, I'm sorry that happened to you. When we started talking, I was like, oh my God, what did I do? You know what I mean? I just think if you look into anybody's life, you're going to find something that someone's going to deem inappropriate. I don't think it's that hard when you're looking for something. But so I'm sorry that happened to you. I think you do have a right. I feel like we all do speak from where we come from, the community. And I think that's what they kind of wanted. That's why there's 16 of us, because they wanted a wide swath of us. And I just forgot what I was really going to say. Like usual, but I guess that was what I really wanted to say was, anyways, that's what I wanted to say.
Yes, Commissioner Schultz.
My turn, sorry. I know we're getting to the end, so. I want to speak to kind of Commissioner Dry's email. But I will say, kind of getting back to the earlier discussion, I do think I do think as a commission, we should be a little more judicious in how we use the email system to communicate. And I think we've been using the facilitators kind of a pass through, but I think really fundamentally to me, when I look at it, does the public at large, whether they choose to follow us or not, or everyone or no one does, do they have access to those communications? And when we start to communicate in that way, they don't. And yeah, without having to go through the step of issuing a core request, but so I just think that we should be careful about either offering kind of those ideas or providing this, providing email discussions, even if it's through the facilitator. And I do think at a certain point, we should maybe post some of those emails as part of our minutes, just to have them as a matter of public record as well, because I do think I want to feel like we are all agreeing upon holding ourselves at a higher standard. And so I made the mistake, and I'm just as guilty. I mean, early on, I know I made a mistake in kind of impulsively doing a respond all, which I regret. But I think in the long run, I think we should just kind of take that to heart and maybe try to be a little more judicious in how we use that communication tool.
I just got a quick follow-up my question is to the group, how many people here were investigated their text messages going to city employees and city councilmen?
How many what?
Were investigated for your text messages?
You mean where they were requested?
Like court requested?
Yeah, the court request, yeah.
Yeah, just for the record, I had none. So
I was just
very
curious
proudly.
how that came about. Does anybody have a clue
I didn't have any.
how it
I don't
came about?
correspond with any
No,
city.
someone put in a request and I was told by someone from one of y'all's offices that I needed to send stuff in, and then they found out that everything that I wanted to send in didn't apply. So
Commissioner Thompson, I'm just gonna say from my experience, having worked for the city for 11 years and being involved in some higher profile projects and not being kind of adjacent to some of the thicker politics of the city, I think to me, I kind of chuckled, I laughed. I thought it was kind of funny because, it's the Cora wars of 2022 when, they one side Cora'd and they got a bunch of juicy information. And then the other side has to Cora and then the other side has to respond in kind. And it just gets to the point where, like if you have a familiar name or like, they throw you in because they think you're part of one group or another. And so I responded immediately, but I chuckled. And to me, I mean, I know it's a broader part of some of the distrust in the community. I don't want to necessarily get into it, but I do think it's something that is just kind of, it's silly, but kind of part of the world we live in these days. So.
and then last question, comment of the night goes to Catherine Muller.
Oh, first and last, wow. First, an announcement, if I could, because this is AAPI month, Asian American Pacific Islanders, and I know I have struggled to learn acronyms, but that's an important one to learn. There are two major events, and one is a movie on next Tuesday, the 10th at 7 o'clock at the Rialto. It's the Joy Luck Club. I think it's $5. I don't remember. The other one is on Sunday, the 22nd at 12:30 at the Loveland Museum, and it's celebrating and the history of AAPI. So I think those are good things for us to know. And I think we need to share those so that we can do that. And I have a request. And at this point, we don't have time to talk about it. I'd simply like permission from you all and would love to have somebody go with me. to visit with the two top people in the recycling center and talk about recycling as a trust issue. Have had a brief conversation at the recycling center, and it seems like it is from their standpoint as well as mine. It's just asking for your permission to just start the conversation.
City Manager Adams, it is 8:45. And we didn't, am I okay to adjourn, or is it like dire? I don't mind waiting an extra like 6 seconds.
I'm saying it's time to adjourn.
Oh, okay, cool. Meeting adjourned, excellent.
Now, for those that really care about the Asian community, you should watch the California Angels games and Shohei Ohtani, who I went and saw pitch at Anaheim Stadium last Wednesday night. He was the MVP in the American League last year.
Oh,